Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Colorado. Man, it's nice to say that. I had the morning show off, so I didn't say good morning. We are breaking in for a wonderful interview. First of all, we do have Sarah Duke, our Vice President of Media. How's it going, Sarah?
Hey, good morning. My goodness, it's been an amazing week so far. I mean, this is a tremendous week for Colorado. So we had, of course, Colorado Gives Day yesterday, which is amazing. It's been around since 2010, I believe. So it was a great, great day for nonprofits. So I love that we are really focusing on nonprofits again today. So yeah, it's wonderful to be here.
It is. It definitely is. We are sitting down with Domingo Cruz, who is the president with Rooted 303. How's it going, Domingo?
It is going awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
of course. Thanks for coming in. We really appreciate it. So Rooted 303, just kind of dedicated to recovery coaching and community outreach. We're going to kind of get into that. But I do want to first ask, how long have you been doing this, Domingo?
So officially we started about 5 years ago. We're hitting our 6th anniversary in December. So 5 years ago we started Rooted 303.
That is amazing. And well, I wanted to let our listeners know too. Thank you again for listening to K4CO Radio. We love our interviews, and I personally have such a big spot in my hearts for those that are involved in community and nonprofit work, because it's so vital to how Colorado is and how we get along with and collaborate. So I wanted to personally thank you, and I've gotten to know you over the months, and you're an amazing person. And every time, like this morning, we are partnered with Inglewood Schools, and they just rave about you. Everywhere I go, they're like, oh, he's the president, or he's on the board, and he's so involved in all these community projects. So I know Rooted 303 is your baby, but I just wanted to say thank you for all of your continued support with Colorado.
It is so much fun to be part of the playground, right? When everyone's doing their part and working together, you just make such a bigger difference.
Yes.
And those relationships are important. People are passionate, and the Inglewood School System and the Inglewood Chamber of Commerce have just been awesome partners of ours.
For sure.
They are awesome. Yep, I agree.
I'm curious about a little bit about your background and your personal story, because Rooted 303 is really important to you. Can you go into a little bit about what brought you to start this organization?
Sure. I think there's so many things that kind of layered together to inspire what became Rooted 303. Personal experience-wise, I grew up in a lot of poverty and addiction, mental health issues. It was just kind of standard as I was growing up. So I didn't actually even think there was anything wrong with it until I was in my 20s or late teens, where I felt like, okay, this is not necessarily the way I want to live or have my surroundings. So I think like from a personal perspective, that is ingrained in how I manage Rooted 303, how we go after people, what we do in our services, is just knowing that doesn't have to be like that when you're growing up. Even if you don't know something different, there's something different out there. So being raised that way, I feel like impacted me a lot. In my 20s, I kind of wanted to rebel against the things that were around me. And so I wanted to do something big and different. So I'm like, wow, I've been raised around these types of drugs and Bacardi and house parties and things like that. And so I rebelled into a club scene and hallucinogenics and more cosmetic style drugs.
You're not alone.
And so that's kind of where I did my spin. And after that, it still didn't fill any voids, right? Like there were still things that were left. Some of it was great times. Like I won't knock it all. Sometimes it's just the consequences you don't want.
True.
But at the time, it was what it was. And so that kind of like molded again some of my experiences to say, hey, these are things that can be part of your life, but they don't have to define who you are. And I'm a little long-winded, so I'll look for cues for you to navigate me.
Okay.
But the one pivotal moment that I think launched a lot of our approach is I started to mentor a kid in the foster care program in Florida. And he was just about to turn 14, and I actually met him through a friend who was mentoring, and she said, hey, I'm in a program. I go sit and have lunch with a kid, and we share experience at their school. We laugh, we have a good time, and it makes me feel really good. And so I'm like, I'm in a part of my life where things have gotten a little dark and crazy, and I want to feel just good. Turns out that organization had a bunch of mentoring programs. And so when they asked me which one, I said, just put me where you need me, where it would fit. And I smile now because all these stories just kind of go together, kind of funny. I'm 4'8" and Puerto Rican. And when she looked at me and I filled out all the paperwork, she says, it's going to be a little bit hard to find you someone to mentor because the kids that we work with are looking for a father that looks big and strong and can protect them because of the things they've gone through. And they're looking for a mother who's Susie Homemaker and is going to bake and cook. And they have an image of what family looks like.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, so it could take months for us to find someone for you. And I wasn't in a rush. I said, that's fine. A week later, they contacted me and they said, we have a kid who we think that you guys could be a great match. There could be synergies. And the way she described it was, he has little man syndrome and you seem so well adjusted with being short.
I don't even know how to take that.
At first I was a little bothered, but if I'm honest, I take it as a compliment. I come across super well adjusted even when I'm not. But I met him and it was an immediate synergy. And I mentored him from 14 until he aged out of the foster care program. And he just inspired me left and right to do something, to be part of a solution, right? Even if you're not going to be someone who adopts, or you someone that can guide, or you someone that can help, or you someone that can create experiences that makes people's worlds bigger. And so he changed the direction of everything that was in Florida. And so
I love that. Well, you hit on a lot of important things. I love that you said, however you grow up, you think that that is normal. And I have a lot of similarities with your story in the beginning, where you grow up in, because that's all you know, right? You're in this tiny little bubble. And I'm teaching my 5-year-old right now about what tools are. He's so cute. He's like a hammer or a screw. I'm like, there's actually different types of tools that you can use. And here is the whole big world. And you don't have to normalize certain behaviors.
Right.
And I love that you broke out of it, because I think that's really hard. And then even to be put in a situation where, again, they're trying to fill a stereotype,
Right.
which why we still do that in our worlds, I don't know. The whole point of mentoring and giving back is to say, this is good for everyone. We're all after the same goal. So I'm so glad. I love that they called you within a week. They're like, you know what? We're just kidding. Like, we had this image and you shattered it, of course, because that's what this is all about, is the connections. And nobody cares, where the background. I mean, any disease, addiction, it doesn't matter where you've come from.
100%.
Like, I think that gets a lot of a bias to it, as does everyone else. It's like, well, you got this because of this. It's like, no, sometimes you just get it.
Right.
Like, that's just the trait of life. So, well, how long ago were you in Florida?
Florida, I've been in Colorado for 12 years.
Okay.
So about 12 years. So yeah, that's when I came over here from Florida.
What brought you out to Colorado from Florida?
Ironically, so many crazy parts of the story. When I met this kid, I was an agnostic atheist, not really a believer. Because of him, I started to take him to church. And there I got ingrained in local outreaches and helping the community in that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And my spiritual life changed that way. That's a whole fun story by itself. And so I came out to Colorado with some friends to help start a church.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And that was here in Littleton. I know that's
In
where
Littleton.
Rooted 303 is. Okay.
The church was in Littleton. Rooted 303 really started in Inglewood. That's why we have so many ties
Gotcha.
there.
Okay.
And then we landed in the Littleton area.
Amazing. So you've been here about 12 years.
Yeah.
Came with a church. And how did you create, because Rooted 303, for those of you that are listening, go to Rooted, and it's 303, the number is 303.org. And I love the trees. And you encompass, and it looks like buildings. To me, that looks like Denver-ish. Or it could be really anywhere. But tell us about the symbolism with the Rooted 303 name.
I love it. So we are completely symbolic in almost everything we do. Everything has a meaning, and my staff makes fun of me because they're like, what does that mean? And why did you actually pick that? And so for us, the trees were really symbolic of community, something growing together, the roots growing together, like the aspen trees in Colorado. I know a lot of people use that as well. And the city is supposed to be the Denver skyline, whether it is or not now. It was originally. But Rooted itself, it comes from a scripture in Jeremiah 17:7-9. That basically says, if your roots are grown down deep towards the river, that you'll never have to fear the storms or the rains or the droughts, because you'll always be close to the source. And for us, the way we navigate that in our community is that you're close to your community. When things get hard, we're not really programmatic. We're not like, hey, 12 steps here or 30 days there, 90 days here. We're kind of like a come and go organization. We work with your goals, and as your goals adjust, we grow with you. And then if you want to come back and do some of our other stuff, you're more than welcome to. So for us, we want people to know that when things get hard, right? If you have roots in your community, you just lean on your community. You don't have to lean on all the other options that are out there to medicate or for coping skills. You can lean on your people. And so that's part of our community.
So that's what really brings in the community aspect of it, and whatever stage you are in life. It's not just a come here and we'll get you situated, then, oh, you're good. Correct. Take care.
100%. And we don't disconnect that way. So for us, recovery is a long-term and broad term. Mm-hmm. So a long-term process, but also a broad term. So we do work with people that are going through some substance misuse, but we're going through people who are actually working through trauma or losing your family, getting back together, coming through grieving, looking for your purpose. So we work with it from all aspects. So when I say our individuals' goals change, they literally can go from, okay, I'm wanting to abstain or moderate in drug use, but now I'm actually trying to rebuild my family. Mm-hmm. Now I'm actually progressing at work. Now I'm looking at rebuilding. Now I want to be part of something bigger. So the goals change completely.
So the substance kind of issues, that's just part of it right there. So this isn't just addiction type fueled.
100%.
Gotcha.
So we're broken up almost in thirds, if you can imagine, or fourths. We have a part of our community that is people who have been impacted by something directly, whether it's drug misuse, trauma, things that they're working through. We have another third that are the friends and the family, right? They've been impacted by the ripple effect. Sure. And then we have people that really just want to be part of something good. And so those three parts of our community are really active with us.
Awesome. I love that they're, for me personally, being around in the nonprofit world, I think a lot of people don't know that there are other resources out there, and it's awareness, and it is. It's just trying to say we are here. And I love that you actually follow them on their journey. I think a lot of times in many situations, I personally am in recovery as well. And so they focus so much on either the 30 or 45 days and then say, it's been fun, you're released to the wild. And you go from this tight-knit little bubble into, oh my gosh, where do I go from here? Because it's really, who do you turn to at that point? And that's true for so many different aspects of life. Going through a marriage or a divorce or having a child or moving into a new community. There's so many different areas of resources. So I appreciate that you follow these people, and it's a huge ripple effect, right? I mean, if you think about the one person that has trauma, you think about that tiny circle, and then the community, and then your schools, and then your children and their friends. So it just keeps going. So having people to rely on is so crucial and valuable.
I think it's so important. And even what you described of the stages, if you think of like when someone passes away in your life, everyone comes to help you at that moment. Right? Mm-hmm. But grieving goes on for such a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. I think the same happens with almost any other kind of recovery. The big bang moment happens and everyone comes. But as you're continuing to get better, the stressors are different, the triggers are different, navigating is different. You can't use the same tools forever. You have to change and learn new things. Mm-hmm. And so following along with people becomes super important.
For sure. And you do offer a lot. I mean, you have workshops, you have recovery and resilience coaching, our 3 groups, of course, community outreach. So can you explain kind of those different aspects?
Yeah, we probably need to say no to stuff more often. But we have amazing partnerships in the community, other service organizations. And so when they're doing something well, we just hand it off. Mm-hmm. And if we can't find someone who's doing it, we just figure out how to do it until we find someone who's doing it better. And then we kind of navigate those. So a lot of what you see comes from, hey, how can we do it in a way that is benefiting our community that we couldn't find somewhere else? So I'll start with that. So we do our resilience coaching, and that's real big in Colorado. It's actually extending or has extended into so many states, and it's now going into Puerto Rico. Not us personally, but the field itself of peer coaching, which is beautiful and can be for more than just substance. It's actually under anything of mental health. So that actual scope of peer coaching covers so much, and it helps people with a friendly approach, and a little bit more shoulder to shoulder support than necessarily a therapist.
Okay, that was my question, kind of leading in for those that are listening that aren't familiar with coaching. So you have the clinical side,
Yep.
right? If you go to a rehab or a hospital or something like that, then it's more quote unquote clinical. But peer recovery, peer coaching can be going to an organization like yours and saying, hey, I've been through this too, come talk to me.
Yep.
Essentially. So.
100%. And my favorite example is actually not around substance use, but more around like, let's say anxiety. So if you're struggling with anxiety, you might see a therapist, and we have therapists on staff as well, that will do that full clinical support going into your past, working with your tools for the future. But then you can tag that with a peer coach. And a peer coach is the one that can actually go to that coffee shop with you and navigate that anxiety with you there in the moment. Maybe even go grocery shopping with you. Debrief with you like a friendly approach, but with some counseling skills and therapeutic skills, even though they're not counselors. And so every peer coaching organization has a clinical back end and oversight. So it's still very much accountable and on the up and up and done well. But those two things together become really supportive for someone. Because if you can imagine, you're being taught skills that you have to go practice by yourself. And that's
so
super
true.
hard. Same with recovery.
Right. You have a buddy to go with you. I need a buddy. I do have a buddy when I go shopping. I do. I have anxiety when I go grocery shopping.
Uh-huh.
But if I have someone with me, so much easier.
So
and I
much
can like
easier.
chit chat, and then I'm not overwhelmed by people. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm going to get lost and never find my way out.
I miss when they were open 24/7. I loved doing grocery shopping at like 1 a.m.
Yeah, oh
like
my gosh, that
nobody's
was the
there.
best.
They had a little bell when you needed to check out. Yeah, that was great.
The good old days.
The good old days. When it comes to the clinical approach, coaching, where do you find your staff or your partners or people that do come in and help out?
So that's great. I don't know if we just decided to make our organization as difficult as possible, but there's a couple of things that go into that. So we do have a clinical director and administrative clinical directors that help us, and so they navigate us and they're on with us. So they're with us. Our peer coaches, we have contract coaches, we have full-time coaches, and we have volunteer coaches, and all of them go through the same training. So that level of investment doesn't change. Their supervision doesn't change, whether they're staff, whether they're contract, or whether they're volunteers. And they have all come from referrals within the community and a couple of people that might have just found us randomly and come to us that way. So that's kind of how our staff comes in, which also makes sense to the way we go out into the community. So one of the things that makes us a little bit different is we actually go into communities that we know that there is a high need, like housing communities, job programs, into the community and say, hey, we're going to start a group for support, whether it's wellness, community, recovery specific, and build relationship until we are able to help build that kind of relational currency that lets us speak life and direction with people. So we go into the community, build that trust and relationship. A lot of times you hear organizations like ours where you have to come to that organization to get help. So you have to go to the rehab, you have to go to the place, which makes sense. They're a clinical model.
Yeah.
Right.
While we're a community model, so we figured we'd just go out to the community.
Right. With your partners, are you partnered with other nonprofits? Are you partnered with other organizations, businesses?
So it's awesome. We have several amazing partners. Business-wise, we do have some business partners, and that are great, like Great Guys. Great Guys, right?
I
With
do,
Maddie.
and Maddie is on your board,
Yes,
correct?
and Maddie's on our board, and
They're fabulous.
They're amazing. They've been supporters for us since we started, since the very beginning, one way or another. Between Marcus and Maddie, they've just been amazing, and they help in the community. So whether it's with us or other people, they're just involved. So we always say we find our tribe, whether we're business networking or whether we're working with other nonprofits, we're finding our tribe. And so people who are like-minded in that way. Newmaker Financial, Charlene did an interview with you guys.
Yes, she
They've been
did.
an amazing support and just great at being an advocate for things that we need and also getting people support. Just great angles and support that way. So from our business perspectives, there's just been several that are just amazing. I use the word amazing and fantastic a lot, so it'll come up like 10 more times.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
It's a
fantastic.
fantastic adjective.
Yes. But nonprofits, we work with several as well. One of our biggest partners right now is Mercy Housing, and another one is House Working and Healthy. But Mercy Housing, they do a Housing First initiative. And so their goal is if we provide housing, we think it'll help your problems to like 60 to 70%. You'll have a safe place to go, a place to be. They work with people who have been unhoused or people who have come from unsafe environments. And so we'll go to their locations. They open up their locations for us, and we'll have groups and get people into services for one-on-one or community or support or whatever they need.
That is amazing. And I know Julie Kessler is also on your board. And
yes, with the buyer's choice. Yes.
She's amazing. You know, I love that. It's so interesting to me. I was talking to Josh before the interview, how much overlap that starts to happen, especially with chambers and cities and nonprofits and businesses. If you have the community at the forefront, like there's so much overlap because we truly care about who we live next to. I mean, this is what makes the world go round.
It's so beautiful. And Julie specifically is an amazing connector. Like, I feel like she knows everyone. And so with her company and her business with the Buyer's Choice, she definitely has been able to connect through the Castle Pines Chamber and other chambers that she's part of. And so it's just been great to be able to get people who advocate. And
for sure,
while I love it and I'll be selfish, this is my Rooted 303 moment. But most of the organizations we work with, they work with multiple nonprofits.
Right.
And so they really are, like you mentioned, making a difference, caring about the community wherever those needs are. And so it's really beautiful.
I agree. Being in my personal involvement, it's always about collaboration, not about competition. For me, it's always, who is the goal? The goal is the community, and whatever capacity we're coming at this, work together, not against each other. And when we pool together, whatever that is, whether it be volunteer work or funds, it makes a much bigger impact and a much faster impact when that goal is achieved.
And it's weird when there's competition. I think people don't realize this, but there's enough brokenness in the world
to
where we can all help.
Yes,
right? There's enough needs that we can really collaborate.
Yes.
So it's weird when competition creeps in, but it does, like in any environment. But the idea of that is like you said, when we come together, we can feed more people. When we come together, we can help more people. We can get more parts of their lives together and just provide that support.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, I wanted to get into also your workshops. Tell us a little bit about those.
So we have some great workshops, and they're all based again on needs, right? So what we found were there are several workshops that lead to groups and lead to coaching because you can give people a foundation. So one of them is our Parents Forever program, where we can do that at different increments of 4, 8, or 12 hours to meet legal requirements for a parenting class. But it teaches parents on how to navigate their families that are in transition. So while all of our workshops work for everyone, they all kind of have an angle. So our parenting angle is, hey, there might be something different. Maybe it's a family coming together. Maybe it's a family coming apart. Maybe it's a family where you're getting your kids back. Whatever that looks like, we talk about how to navigate those parenting skills, how to do your self-care, how to co-parent, all kind of wrapped up in a class. And then for every workshop we do, if you wanted more or one-on-one support, then we can tag you with a coach or a therapist. And so it kind of leads in that way. We do a Better Love workshop to increase your emotional intelligence within your relationship so that you can know yourself better and then be able to work together with your partner. And so that is another great workshop we love. Those are usually done on Saturdays. There's 2 more, and I'm going to forget them if I don't do them in order. The Science of You. And so that, I love that one. It really is more on identifying yourself from a personality perspective, but then how to communicate and work with others. So I think a lot of times when people do that half portion of, this is how you know yourself. But it really doesn't matter if you don't know how to communicate that out or how to work with people who are different, right? So we kind of collaborate that together. And then
I love on the website real quick how it says, discover what makes you tick and gain insights. I need to take this real quick.
Yes.
No, I already know what makes me tick.
Take it.
I think that's so
I do
important.
too.
You need to know what motivates you and what actually drives you. And when you have opportunities to talk about it, you kind of sometimes figure out that maybe what you've been telling yourself is not what motivates
Exactly.
you.
It's like the window, and you probably know this better. I forget the term, but it's the 4 different panes.
Johari's window.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Of how we see ourselves, and really that's not accurate with what you're portraying to the world. It's like, I'm amazing. And then you go in the community, they're like, you know what?
Not.
No, you're not. Here's what we're observing from you. So it's good to get different perspectives, I think.
I think it is super important, and in playful environments where you're safe to actually talk about that.
Exactly.
Because sometimes it can be really daunting when you're like, oh, I'm not great at that.
I know.
I'm not. I thought I was a great communicator, but none of you understand what I'm saying. Like, it's great to be able to do it in a safe environment where you can play with it a little bit.
For sure.
The fourth workshop is really interesting, especially just because, you know, growing up, going through all the changes, and then you see, you know, I got nieces right now, and you see kind of the young and the differences between all the technology and all the, you know, there's a huge difference between how we grew up and how kids are growing up right now. You have Axios Teen Response. What is that?
I so love that, and I love teenagers. Obviously, like I said, my direction was changed because of a teenager in so many ways. And so what we found is that Inglewood schools and Littleton Public School System, if kids are caught with substances or have certain things that go wrong at school, they will have them go into like a type of response class that will talk about coping skills, strategies, resiliency, decision making. At least that's what ours does. And discusses substance use impacts for awareness. And so when we saw that they had a need to have more organizations that do that and more of a support, we decided to launch one of our own with those topics that we're talking about, with decision making, self-care, understanding, peer pressure. But what we are excited about is that for us, it's about community. And so we want these teenagers to know they're not alone. Like, it's not just a couple teachers that might care about you or who you perceive, because I feel like all of them care, but who you perceive cares about you, what your friends are, where your family's at. You actually do have other people you can use as safe places, and Rooted 303 is one of them. So we use that workshop to not only educate them, but to spend some time with them, to build rapport and relationship and make sure that they know that there are other people out here. It also is interesting because while it's based on maybe being caught vaping or caught with alcohol or something like that at school, I feel like this in general, saying addiction or substance use, I have my air quotes on, it's real. I don't know why I do that, but it feels like dealing with the Band-Aid. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel like I work with addiction. We work with whatever led you to,
right,
and the consequences after.
For sure.
Otherwise, I'd just be sitting here going, don't do that, don't do that.
Exactly. If you stop drinking, that's great. Now what?
Yeah, now you deal with all the problems.
Now you deal with why were you doing it? And it's like, oh no, I can't just stop drinking and the problems don't go away with that.
Right.
Like,
100%.
Yeah, now you have to work on you. And
Yep.
It's wonderful to be in a safe environment. I love that you focus on teens too. And even the younger kiddos. Yeah. I mean, I'm going through that, and it started at age 3 with my kiddo, that I'm having difficult conversations. I thought it was going to be, hey, don't go hit that kid on the playground, or keep your hands to yourself. These are very adult conversations that are being introduced at younger ages. And especially with technology, we say frequently on the radio that it's a necessary evil, because it's wonderful, and it can lead to potentially some bad things as well. So I think to intervene and have a safe spot, I think for kids to know that you can come in and say absolutely anything and you will not be judged. Right. There is no bias whatsoever, and come tell us what's going on, because we want to reach a solution and not have you dig the hole deeper.
Right.
So I love that you're doing that with teens. I had a follow-up question with that. For your workshops and the entire Rooted 303. Do you have age limits? Like, can you work with young kiddos up to 100 years old, or do you focus on certain ages?
So we focus on certain ages, but we have outliers. I think our youngest client was 7 or 8, working with a therapist.
Okay.
And then our oldest client working with a peer coach was 81.
Okay.
And so we kind of span.
Yes.
If we can get someone to a specialized person, if they need that, we'll do that. But we'll also fill the gap until that happens. Our median age that we're actually working the most with is probably in their late 30s, early 40s.
Okay. When you've been on your own long enough and you go, yeah, still isn't working.
Still isn't working. Have gone through rehab a couple times, and now you're looking for something in, the community that might help, because you've learned some skills there, but now you need to practice them in a different way.
For sure.
The stresses of craving when you're moderating or in sobriety the first year are really different after you get the stresses of a new job. Right. And then that's pressure, right? It's
Yes.
different, but it's not the same. And so now you're like, okay, what do I do here? And sometimes sharing with people who have gone through that, it makes a difference.
Of course. I love that you said, especially grieving. And trauma responses, they can happen at any time, at any place. You know, you get in a car accident and you feel like, okay, well, now I have to go through physical rehab. But 10 years later, like I still, if I drive by that same spot, I start to sweat. I start getting very anxious. I have to pull over. And it's the same thing with any type of an event in your life. If it's been traumatic or you have anxiety or depression or whatever it is, and they can creep up at certain spots, like certain smells even, and the visual responses. So to know where you can go immediately is a very important thing. At least I'm speaking from personal experience. Be like, I know when I have this response, I'm calling this person. 100%. Be like, hey, this is now happening again, and I'm pulling over in my car and I'm sitting on my hands because I need to talk about this for about 5 minutes to kind of talk me off the ledge a little. So thank you for having that support coming from personal and the community side of things. So thank you.
I think it's so important. I was in a car accident 2 years ago, and I didn't think it was the biggest deal ever, but for about a year, whenever the brakes would get hit in a car and I wasn't driving, I would brace myself for impact because it just like jarred you, you know?
It does. That you store it in your body. And it's so true. You think you can go through all these different steps, which are crucial to talk about it and process it that way. But trauma is stored in your body.
100%.
And so, I mean, I know a lot of people that go through the physical trauma without it actually being a physical itself. Like you can even witness a car accident and you can store all of that information in your body. You're like, wow, my back has been hurting for a year. Why? I'm like, what you saw was kind of a big deal. So go treat it. And there's so many different ways. I love that you encompass, you know, the workshops, and you have peer counseling and therapists, and you have a full board. So it's really impactful.
Thank you. Thank you. And when you say full board, I just even have to gloat on our board, and they're an active board. Nice. Like they're out doing things, connecting, seeing how they can make a difference. Like it's just awesome.
Very cool. Well, you all, I mean, you got home last night at midnight, I believe, from a pretty impactful last 7 days. Tell us about Costa Rica.
I love it. So Costa Rica is part of our outreach kind of pillar thing that we do. We do local outreaches all the time. So we try to coordinate helping homeless shelters, helping other organizations and other nonprofits meet their goals. We'll bring volunteers. We just believe that service shows you your purpose sometimes, things that you're good at and that you like. And it's always good to give back. You got to be part of something that's bigger than yourself. In that, once a year, we try to take a trip outside of the continental U.S. to do service work somewhere else. There's a lot that goes into that for us. We believe that when you're in a healing process or in a hard, difficult situation, no matter what it is, you make your world small so that you can control it. Mm-hmm. So you cut some people out, you focus only on work, you focus only on the family, focus on your process, and everything else gets cut out. And one of the first things that gets cut out is fun and service for other people, being part of something bigger, because you're trying to control.
Right.
And that's not bad. It's part of the healing process. But as you start healing, the growing starts to happen. And so we want to help make people's worlds bigger again. And so we love to take them from the local to the outreaches that are outside of the U.S. So we go to Puerto Rico or Costa Rica, alternating years to be able to get people out. It also is so hopeful when you're planning for something bigger, right? Like it gives people something to look forward to when you're in your small stages of maybe a sober home or a recovery home or doing other activities together throughout the year for fundraising. It just gives you hopeful next steps as you move through. Puerto Rico doesn't need a passport because it's a territory of the U.S. I feel like we have to say that a lot. A lot of people don't realize that. But so that makes it kind of a one easier step. Mm-hmm. And then Costa Rica, you do need a passport for. But we work with partners there that are amazing. In Costa Rica, we worked with 6-8 Ministries. And they're a Christian organization, and they are ingrained in several areas in Costa Rica over the last 20 years. And so we get to leverage their relational currency into what they've developed. And we got to work at feeding centers for the homeless, work with some folks in addiction. So we got to see what it looks like in another country. We got to go into really small rural towns that have almost nothing, where you're in dirt floors, where needs aren't fully met there. And we got to work with kids there, doing some kids events and supporting some of their programming there. And so it's amazing, it's rewarding, and it's so beautiful.
I absolutely love it. I mentioned to you off air, I've done that a couple times. Once I was with my father in Asia, and we went with very remote populations, and it's so vital and important when you are immersed in that situation.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to read about it or see it on the news, but when you are physically there, you can't look away.
You can't look
It's like, this is actually happening. And what I find for me personally when I'm in those situations is that I am so grateful for the purity of the moment. I feel like all you need, I mean, what we've been talking about is community. And I mean, I feel like I'm going to dog on our country a little bit here for a moment, but because it's so life changing. I mean, when you go from Asia, like Laos, for example, and you come through Hawaii, it's shocking. You know, you go from this very pure, kind of innocent lifestyle of really reaching out to what are we doing with our lives? You know, we have so much extra stuff. And so I think to get down to the core values of what makes us as human beings tick. I love that you said tick, but that's on because it's so true.
Yep.
We want to wake up and be loved and feel safe and be able to have our community. I mean, I think that's pretty true across the world.
Across the world. And I think in some of these environments, you know, I would never want to exchange the privileges I have here to live in some of that poverty.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing the simplicity of community and love, where we're going to locations where people who have nothing are trying to take care of you and help you.
Right.
Where little kids who have nothing are giving you a bracelet. Their Christmas presents will barely fill a stocking. And if anything, some of them only got what they got from this organization. And here they are when we're talking about what do you want for other people in the world? They're talking about, oh, we need to pray and take care of people who don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, I'd like you to actually expand a little bit. You said what addiction looks like in a different country. Of course, the poverty, we can all kind of see. What are some other things? I mean, you just got back. What do you see are some of the main differences of addiction between here and between Costa Rica when you were there?
That's a great question. We kind of had those conversations with the organization itself on, hey, what's actually prevalent on your streets?
Yeah.
What are people using for their coping? And alcohol is always big almost everywhere you go. I feel like it's one of the cheapest things to make. But then currently, like when we were talking in Costa Rica, they're experiencing a lot of meth and a lot of crack, where like Colorado's experiencing a fentanyl epidemic. And so like the types of drugs that you can have access to and how they're made is different. So it's just a very, I guess, I don't want to say diverse, but when you need to cope, you're going to find something to cope with.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll work with whatever they can get their hands on there too.
When you all are there, because it's, you know, for those 7 days, so it's kind of that initial, here we are, here's some coping skills that you can use. What happens after those 7 days? So right now, do they have follow-up recovery, kind of similar to what you're doing here?
So I'll change that a bit. When we
Okay.
go, we don't force our programming there.
Okay.
We go into whatever programming they have.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that way those skills and those tools can be maintained
continue. Okay.
and can continue. It's funny that you brought that up. One of our conversations over the last 7 days with the leader of that organization and some of his staff was maybe in the next few years as we come, we bring programming down so that it benefits their staff and the people they help.
For sure.
But
you
it would
can
be then
continue and
teaching it.
implement. Of course. We thought about that a lot, about how to bring clean water. Because a lot of times it's like, okay, have this pill, add it to this, but then you have to continue it, right? And so there has to be that supply. So I was curious. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that like that. Like you, oftentimes when you go to another, and I think it's big when you go to another country, but you can see it in different pockets, even within Denver metro area.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You can't bring a white tower approach of this is what works.
Right.
You really have to go into that community and see what do they have, what can they maintain, who can sustain that, how will those things come in before you implement something. Otherwise, the cookie cutter approach just makes somebody feel good, but it doesn't really work.
So speaking about going in and just kind of seeing what they have there, not pushing yours, what are some of the differences in what they had, what they offered compared to what you guys do at Rooted 303?
So that's awesome because, you know, I've been to this organization I've visited for 15 years.
Wow.
And so seeing them grow and seeing a lot of what they do is inspirational. And I think even inspired me when I created Rooted 303. Part of something that they do really, really well, and I would like us to continue or even shift a little bit of what we do, is the community aspect. They do create those safe spaces where you're coming for an amount of time. They are known as a light, like, come here. You need something, come here. And while it's a Christian organization, it's not a conversion-based organization. They're not looking to transactionally do a religious exchange for your needs.
So they're not looking to push their religion on anybody.
No, you come there because you came. That was it.
You just needed a hand.
Yeah. And a couple things they do, and I don't know that they're different than Rooted 303 per se, but they also build their leaders locally. So they look for who can they build skills with that are in those communities or in their areas. So they're not foreigners just coming to supply programming or help. They actually come in and they help identify, hey, who here can get to their next step? And as they get to their next steps, can we build leadership in them? And we've started to yield some of the fruit of us doing that here, where we have groups that we run in the community where we've like, oh, that person in this group, okay, they help us practically lead the group.
Right.
Like, let's continue to build that in them because it gives them purpose as well. So I think those are things we leverage from them or inspired from them, and seeing that work that way. Actual programming, they're not like a rehab center, so that's literally all community based. So hey, they're seeing life change by spending time with people and helping celebrate their wins, giving them some help, but not necessarily giving them a program of tools.
Gotcha.
I love that. Another part that I went to South Africa, and we went to a lot of schools and communities there. And it is and I agree, if we took a little bit of their model here in the United States, and any organization, whether it be a nonprofit or a for-profit business, is you look at who you have and you say, you're really good at this skill. You're really great at this skill. Why don't we harness that? Because I mean, there was a community of all women that were together. There were probably 40 or 50 of them. Yeah. And you had one that taught all of the women how to do basket weaving. And they would go to the next community and they would trade. They would trade their goods for food or milk or whatever they needed to. And they did. They found the different leaders. So they had the teacher of the group. And they said, you are a wonderful educator, a wonderful communicator. Yeah. You're in charge of these 15 kids. So I think to harness what your natural gifts are, it will emerge immediately. I think sometimes we try and pigeonhole people into, you're going to do this job, even though we're not looking at what you're really good at sometimes. Right. So I think to harness what you're naturally good at.
100%. And how that works with someone else. So I'm naturally good at this, you're naturally good at that. So we can trade our goods, or what does that look like to support each other? I think becomes super effective.
I love it.
Speaking of support, you recently had a gala this last November, correct?
We did.
That was in Centennial? It was
in Centennial at the Village Event Center, which we love the Village. They're always so kind to us and so flexible to work with everything. And it was a great event. We do an annual gala as our fundraiser, our biggest fundraiser of the year. And so there's a silent auction, a live auction, some activities. This year I got a stilt walker. Every year I've been told no to a stilt walker, and they surprised me with a stilt walker, so I was so happy. It brought my inner child out.
I want to be in that boardroom. It's just like, all right, what do we need? Stilt walker. That's what we need.
Every year it looks more like, hey, I want a stilt walker and a fire breather, and every year they're like, no. And it's always multiple no's. So it's not
a fire breather on stilts.
Don't play games. That would be amazing.
Nice.
Katie, somewhere here in the studio. Katie, that's what we'll need.
Okay, a fire breather. Need a little dragon on stilts.
On stilts.
We can make that happen.
But it was great to see the community come out and support us in that way. Not only from the fundraising perspective, but to be there. We get to showcase some of our stories, and people share their stories. This year, one of our peer coaches, Amber, shared her story, and it was just beautiful, of just redemption and rebuilding and everywhere she's at now. So
I love it.
Good.
Thank you for
Oh no. I was just going to ask, does Rooted 303 throw other types of events? What do you have looking forward to next year? And outside of just the standard, the regular Rooted 303, do you guys throw events as well?
So this year we moved into the East Community Center
Okay.
And so it's given us a better location to be able to put on more events. So in 2025, we're actually mapping out our calendar. We'll have a few more events that are more socially based because our outreaches run from some that are labor intensive and some that look more just like community building. And so we want to add more of those in. Last year we did a movie night. We'll probably do some version of that again this year. And this year we want to add in something for Thanksgiving to be able to add some more community events that way as well.
Nice.
Cool. Well, you had mentioned stories a little earlier. I know you had mentioned the young gentleman in Florida, that teenager that really kind of inspired the journey here to Colorado. Any other stories that really are pivotal over the past, 5-6 years that have meant a lot to you?
There's so many that have meant so much. Again, when we are a peer coaching organization first, but we are dealing with so much more than just substance misuse in that focused area. It is broadening against co-occurring conditions as well as just some mental health. As we work through that, our population looks different, so some of that is even aging. So like I mentioned, we have an 80-year-old client. And so I'll just share some of those stories that just really ring my heart. One of our coaches was working with someone who was elderly with multiple medical conditions, years of addiction in their past, and a little bit in their present that they were moderating because of some end-of-life medications that were being misused. But this person didn't feel like they had an addiction or anything to work on. They're like, I'm in my late 70s and I'm not really looking to change anything. But they developed a relationship with a peer coach. And so they started to work on some of their goals. They started to establish goals in their 70s, right? Because life doesn't end until it ends. But I know that sounded crass. But it was great to see them build a relationship where my coach is coming to me asking about old black and white movies and have you ever seen this movie, and this is what we're leading into, and she's referencing, and just the coach started to look into more of these things to build more value into that relationship while they worked on their goals, building that community. Throughout the time, the coach can identify that no one was coming to visit. Family wasn't part of this process. And that person is about a year ago passed away. And their last experiences were with our coach, a coach that was working with them with goals and encouraging them at their end of life and visiting them in the hospital. I'm going to get emotional. And visiting them in the hospital and being that person for them, right? And so we make it sound like it's one thing, but it's so many things in the bridging of that gap there. And so that's one of the stories that just touches my heart. There's another gentleman, he's in his late 50s. And he identified that he was still struggling with alcohol misuse. And we believe in every program at Rooted 303. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. We're like, that didn't work. Let's try the next one. You didn't like that one? Let's do another one. Like, oh, you want to go back and try the first one? Whatever works for someone is what works for someone. We were doing a group for him, and he didn't like the group and told us, he's like, I don't like the group you guys run. I want it to be a 12-step program. And he goes, I've been working a 12-step program for like almost 20 years. And we were like, has it worked? Like,
But you're here.
That's what I was thinking right away. Yeah.
And not being ugly, but we were just like, has it worked? And we're like, you're still struggling right now, and you keep going back to that program. Would you be willing to try a different curriculum with us, a different thing with us, some more behavioral cognitive things, some why you're using versus how not to use, like how we can navigate a little bit that just to try. And he laughed at us first, and then he was like, okay, I'll give it a go. Through relationship, through consistency, he has been now sober for 3 months. It might be 4 months now. From that, he is now working with a therapist as well as a peer coach, as well as attending a community group with us, and was connected to a business owner through us for a mentorship so he can go back into his previous career.
Wow.
And now, will all of that happen at once? I don't know that we care. The goals are his, and we want to work with him at his pace and his goals. But the fact that you went from where you were into sobriety, better health, actually working to get yourself into a better place, and now even looking at employment, I mean, for us, that's huge. That's huge.
It's very life-changing what you're doing.
It's beautiful. We get to see it. You don't always get to see it, right? Sometimes you do a lot of work and you don't get to be the one that sees the results of that, but being able to see some of that has been really powerful.
I mean, to go back to, the Rooted 303 image, even if you plant the seed, it somehow stays in there. You know, it's like, well, Domingo said to me 5 years ago what I need to do. And so it does. Sometimes it just rattles around there. At least this is what it does for me.
Yeah.
I didn't take his advice. And so here I am 5 years later, still suffering. So maybe I can try something different or try a different approach or reach back out because you guys are still there. And speaking of, I saw that you all are hiring, correct?
We are hiring for another peer coach. I'd love 2 more peer coaches.
Okay.
We just have an increase in our demand of referrals that are coming in and for people who are seeking help directly. Since we're not programmatic, we follow up with people after whether they've used our services or not, 30 days, 60 days, it could be 6 months later, and we'll just follow up to see how you're doing. And so sometimes they're in a different stage where they want to work on something new. And so kind of you mentioned the consistency piece. We have people coming back going, hey, you helped me with this, or I wasn't ready then. And so, we are looking for 2 more contract coaches.
Awesome. Well, if people want to either, become a coach or they want to volunteer, or if they're looking to get a little help, what is the best way to reach out to you?
They could just give us a call. And you have our number?
I do. It's 303-729-3681.
Awesome.
Is the best way. You all are on Facebook as well at Rooted 303. And of course your website, rooted303.org.
Yes.
So there's lots of ways to get in touch with you, which is great. I have a personal kind of, request for me. I would love to go on a trip like to Costa Rica or Puerto Rico to help volunteer. For those that want to be involved in that way, what does that process look like?
That's awesome. So we do everything in a difficult way. So I say that just to warn you in advance. We love to build up meetings leading up to the trip. So you don't sign up for a trip and just go, because we like to build a little bit of the team dynamic, a little bit of that understanding. It creates community. Right. It creates team sport. When people go on trips with us, it stays with them for their life. Like they come back, that is a unit. We've even done reunion parties for trips that have gone off because they want to still keep in touch. And so it's really beautiful that way. We do them annually. Usually in December is when we'll try to go. So there's the first week of December after Thanksgiving. And so we just ask people to reach out, let us know. We'll put you on our list of information. The trips vary in cost just a little bit. We've been able to keep our trip costs down to pre-COVID pricing. Nice. I don't know that we could do that in 2025, but we're going to
I like that pricing.
Yeah.
I mean, a trip that would normally cost $2,200 to $2,300, we've been doing for $1,500 and $1,600. And of course, we fundraise throughout that time as well as a team to be able to go. We love to take people. Anyone in our community is open to come to the trips. So anyone who wants to come, I say our community, but we don't actually kick anybody out. So anybody who wants to come and can commit to the time frames. So.
Okay, that is amazing. Well, I definitely will. I will try and recruit people. This is, for those of you that are listening and that want to get involved, I mean, I love the immersion piece. I'm so glad that that's a part of here locally and globally. It is so impactful because I think it's good to know that it's down the street that it's happening and it's across the world. This is an epidemic of crazy proportions, and I think we're finally as a world becoming really aware that it's not only addiction, but it's trauma and anxiety and family units and all these. Yeah, when you go through a divorce or a marriage or a child, like these are big events that sometimes they get a little glossed over. And instead of saying, you know what, if you need to reach out to someone, please do so. Yeah. Like, especially, I love that you're here in the holiday season too, because I think that there's all this added, to me, it's unnecessary stress. I like celebrating in February because there's nothing else going on. Like,
all you have is Valentine's Day.
Piss posh. But I think there's sometimes this societal pressure, family pressure that it's like, why? Go make me a card and call it a day. Or go sing me a song.
Yeah.
And then, it's about community, right? And I think a lot of times when you are immersed in that, whether you're at a food bank or volunteering in any capacity, I mean, I just heard the number earlier this year that we have 30,000 nonprofits in Colorado, which is, there's so much need to go. I mean, because a lot of people say, I can't either afford the funds. I'm like, go volunteer your time. Go do it an hour. And it is so largely impactful. I mean, we think, well, we're giving to them, but I always get so much back out of it. I'm like, you just changed the course of this person. That could be their only food for the week. You know, it's so impactful. So if you all can get involved, and man, I love Rooted 303, and truly we hear your name and organization everywhere we go.
Good.
Because it's wonderful. It shows not only the organization, but you personally have done within the local community. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't mention?
I do. There's just one more thing that is on my heart for that. When you talk about getting involved and volunteering, we have volunteer projects that people can do directly with us, and we also partner with other people. So there's, like you mentioned, the machine going. But one of the groups I just specifically want to spike out is that we do have a family and friends craft-based support group. And when I say craft, it's community reinforcement and family training.
Okay.
It's an acronym. We're not crafting.
Okay.
But the reason I mention that one is because a lot of times families, when you have a loved one that's impacted by either long-term mental health issues or substance misuse, no one trains you how to do that. No one trains you how to be a parent. No one trains you how to encounter these things until they happen. You don't know about the resources that are there. But that's one of the groups. We do one on Wednesday in person and one on Friday virtually, just to be able to help families be able to cope with your loved one in the best way. Sometimes all of our good intentions cause more problems. Sometimes our approaches are just difficult because we've learned one thing, and so that's what we're trying to apply. But the idea of being able to have support and just be able to just mitigate some of that, we just love to be part of that process if anyone needs that type of support.
That hit me really hard. Thank you for saying that. Sometimes we have really good intentions, but we're muddying the waters.
Yeah.
So having a different approach and knowing boundaries is
so important.
But you don't know it until you're taught. So I love that you're teaching that. It's so vital for our world. It's like, hey, don't intervene. That didn't help.
Right.
But they have good intentions. You
Yeah.
know, I understand where the heart is, and so I think that's wonderful advice. So thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it. Spending your time. We've been speaking with Domingo Cruz with Rooted 303. That's rooted303.org and 303-729-3681. So thank you very much. It's really appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We will get you back to today's scheduled programming. Be sure to catch Kev on the radio, our afternoon mix of music from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And this has been a wonderful interview with Rooted 303. You all take care.